Thanks for joining. Welcome to our Lunch and Learn in PED. I'd like to welcome Debbie and Kim from the Tourism and Culture Division. A couple things before we get started. If I could ask everybody to please mute their mics so that we can hear the speakers very, very clearly. And as we go on, I'll also be muting everybody just in case you see my name pop up as muting people as people join us. Very excited topic today. This session will be recorded also for future use, and for those that couldn't make it today, it'll also be recorded for onboarding future staff as well. At the end of the session, there will be a short Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions for our speakers, we ask that you use the chat bubble over on the screen and write your question to everybody in the Lunch and Learn. And then at the end, we'll address those questions. And if there's any others, then the speakers will follow up with the participants as well. So at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce Kim Adrovez, the Senior Project Manager for Films, as well as Debbie Spence, Business Development Consultant for Creative Industries. So over to Kim.
So it's actually Debbie, go ahead.
So so hi everyone. So Kim and I we know which slides we practiced a little bit before, so we know which slides each of us are taking. So we'll get started. What we're going to cover today was addressed in the description, but we're going to talk a little bit about how to make a movie and how the city's role is incorporated in there, who helps make film, how film actually back, both economically and socially, how film is helping you survive this quarantine, and what we're working on now. So our continuous improvement efforts and then economic recovery. So what we thought would be useful is not maybe understand or kind of see the different process pieces to film. So I want to take you through just a little kind of high level kind of thing that we've put together. So as many of you know on how familiar you are with film, obviously someone has to come up with an idea or a concept about a TV show, a documentary, or a film. And then from there, the next step would be what's called pre-production. You'll need money. The industry needs to generate funds or get investors to sign on to the project. Then they'll need some crew. And so they might be getting with precasting and all the different stages of that. They'll start with storyboards. And these storyboards is what they'll share with staff. So in this image, you see those kind of icons that are circled in blue, those are where the city interacts with the production, typically. So in the next kind of area, in terms of still on pre-production, there's location scouting. So staff will assist with scouts before they're even going to come to set up the productions. And so staff will work with them to, in some cases, to convince them to come to Hamilton, and others to help them find the best locations for shooting. Then the next step is obviously the production. So now they're shooting, they've decided to come to Hamilton, and then they're going to look at a number of different locations in the city. They're bringing in crews, they've got special effects, they're filling out their film permits. And then local businesses will definitely be getting involved. So hotels need to be booked. The crews will be visiting restaurants. They'll be working with businesses to source, local businesses to source props, to get costumes. And then also where we have spaces for filming, they'll be working with studio spaces or warehouses as well. And then, of course, a lot of you that are in the audience, you're well aware that we do rely on other city services, and those are requests that come in around roads, parking, parks, city facilities, HSR, and then real estate as well. And then the second to last piece of the process is the post-production. So that would include editing, the kind of final touches. There are businesses in Hamilton that do this work, and so this is growing. And then the last stage is obviously the release stage. So it'll go to theaters, and so it could go to local theaters in Hamilton, both the broad commercial ones and then the smaller base, and then obviously the online releases like Netflix and so on. And then the next slide is kind of drills down a little bit around, so what is the city's role in filming, and we'll kind of spread it across the different kind of areas. Kim and I are going to share this slide, so we'll talk just high level about the one that is sector business development on your right upper side. So this is where we work with businesses and productions to attract them and to retain them. And then we also promote the industry and support the industry as well. And then there's an element of workforce or labor force development there. Kim? Oh, Kim, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you, Sylvia. So our wonderful business development, sector development has brought productions to Hamilton. So now the next kind of bucket is providing support to the industry. So some ways that plays out are providing production space inventory listings, so helping productions actually find space to work, local suppliers to do business with, negotiating the use of city assets and service. Advocacy is really around just kind of opening doors and helping to smooth out any issues where production might not necessarily be welcome, to help people understand the benefits and get the production a foot in the door. And then, of course, providing city services such as permitting, etc. That kind of goes into production services, where we, of course, are issuing permits, getting permissions, helping to manage issues that may arise, and assisting with scouting. So all of this requires citywide collaboration. There's no way it could happen just within the film office, and many of you know get calls from us frequently and have to play a part in all of this. And so we just wanted to touch on that and just really highlight how much of a joint effort it is. And just to kind of open that, there's a picture that you can see from when Umbrella Academy was shooting on Ottawa Street. And we just wanted to share a little anecdote about some of the ways that different departments contributed to this. So parking, for example, did some amazing work with the production, thinking outside the box, trying to help them get access to some of the parking lots in the area, reinforcing them, like at the production's expense. The production arranged to reinforce areas with plywood so that they could bring in some heavy equipment that we wouldn't necessarily normally allow into those lots. Parking provided actually old meter heads to the art department so that they could make casts of them, so that they could recreate this street in studio to do some of the studio work. So they helped with the props. And then we had a very cool solution happen on Ottawa Street, where the production, because the scene was set in the 60s, wanted to have some sodium vapor lights as opposed to LED lights, and wanted to be able to turn them on and off at will. So because our lights are on a timer, they're not on a giant light switch, doesn't really work. But we were able to work together with corridor management, transit, and the street lighting team to figure out a solution where we actually had an electrician come in and rig a big giant light switch for the production. Production arranged to have police hold traffic whenever they were going to have the lights out to keep everybody safe. Transit was able to reroute buses accordingly, and at that way, the production was actually able to flick the lights on and off while they were filming. So it just kind of shows how creative it can be and how much we rely on all of you to get involved and support that. So why do we want to do it? It's to build this success. In 2019, filming brought $60 million in direct spend to Hamilton. So that has no multiplier. That is just self-reported by productions what their budget was to spend in Hamilton. And those go to things like paying for location, paying for rentals to businesses and property owners, paying for hotel rooms, making donations to BIA, as well as renting city-owned facilities. There were 140 productions that filmed in Hamilton last year, so TV series, feature films, documentaries, etc. We issued 790 film permits. That is pretty close to what we had in 2018. That's off by about a dozen. And that actually represents a 50% increase versus 2017. So we've had a real sharp increase in volume. And we saw it as well in 2019. We had another sharp increase in the number of production days. So we had 2,900 days of production activity for the year. Some people ask, why are there more days than calendar days? So each day of production activity is one production filming for one day in Hamilton. So as you can see, most of the year we had multiple projects filming, and it's great. The longer they stay in town, the more money they're spending, giving back to local businesses and the community. So again, just getting into who's making filming happen in the city. It's every department. We really couldn't even capture it on a slide, but just high level, some of the people who are contributing are parking, border management, roads, traffic, facilities, parks, the police department, recreation, real estate team, transit, and then of course, BIAs have a role to play, our colleges and universities to graduate our workforce, neighborhoods and communities who welcome these productions in and put up with the disruption. And it's really, we can tap anyone in any department, and we really appreciate all the support that we get when we do. So thank you. So I will turn it back over to Debbie.
Yeah. So me, it's to say we couldn't do it without you. But we also wanted to highlight that hopefully in most cases, each of the departments and divisions and sections are also, and we do know they're seeing money for coming back from it. So from the efforts that you are providing and offering to us and to the productions, you're also seeing some of that money come back. Also, most of the money does go to the broader economy and goes to the private sector. So you're helping us make that happen as well. And then socially, in terms of just certainly at sometimes, entertainment can be for entertainment's sake. But I think right now, some of us are finding it actually helpful to have things to watch and to listen and to kind of take us away from the current situation of feeling like we're in this pandemic. And then it also creates communities and senses of place in neighborhoods. We'll cover that in a slide a bit later on. So some of you have seen some of these stats before in other presentations, but it's worthwhile reiterating that, again, film productions drive Hamilton's film industry, and they drive other cities' industry. So if we did not have productions coming to film in Hamilton, there's not a business case for businesses, bricks and mortar, that are paying property taxes to come here. It also serves as a draw for the labor force to live in Hamilton. And then it's also a benefit when they come here. We've had a lot of really good stories of workers in the industry. When they're able to film here, they're able to ride their bikes, they're able to take transit, or they're able to walk to the locations, which they really love. And so if you look at the side, we looked at, and this is from our sector profile for creative industries, film is the biggest subsector in terms of the area of growth for creative industries. And we have 901 film businesses that are located in Hamilton that help serve the industry. And then we've got a workforce that live in Hamilton of 9,140 film workers. So often they're not able to work directly in Hamilton, but they live here, they pay their property taxes to the city. Hamilton has the third largest cluster of film businesses in Canada, so that's saying a lot. And as Kim said, it's 60 million spent, so that's the economic impact. And then 500K plus in revenues went to the city as a corporation alone. So you'll see, obviously, it's less than the 60 million in terms of the percentage, but that's what, again, drives our economy. We have the third largest employment growth in Canada for film in terms of the sector. And then in terms of the impact of productions, so 85% of the businesses that want to move here, the reason why they want to move here is because they've experienced Hamilton as a city through the lens of filming and productions. So you can see how it all connects together, that we need the productions, to come here in order to generate revenue, in order to create businesses, and in order to create jobs. So it's very much interconnected and dependent on each other. Kim, gotta unmute yourself again.
Thanks, Sylvia. So Debbie touched on this, but we wanted to really highlight to everyone the opportunities that do exist. And these pictures are actually from the former Dominion Glass lot, which the city owns. This is over by Tim Hortons Field, and it is rented out to the Ticats for tailgating and additional parking when there are sports events. The rest of the time, it mainly sits vacant. It's slated to be redeveloped into a park, but for a few years, it's just sort of been a big vacant slab of concrete. So rather than have it sit there vacant, we try to make it productive through film. So in this case, we had a production approach us who wanted to build a standing set. So what that means is, as opposed to just going into a location that exists, filming it for a couple of days and leaving, or as opposed to being in a studio where a production is going to set up sets that are, permanent or lasting for months and months at a time. This was a sort of a semi-permanent situation where a set needed to be built over a period of weeks and stay in place over a period of weeks. And it was to build, as you can see in the pictures, it was to build a boat. So this was a boat that needed to list from side to side for the scene. So there needed to be a nice heavy concrete pad for the builders to latch into to keep it safe. And there needed really to just be a lot of space to work around it. You can see all the cranes surrounding and the green screens. Those are actually used to project background images on so that in editing can make it look like this scene is taking place, in this case, in the middle of the ocean. So this production approached us. We were working with them anyway, assisting with locations in Hamilton. They, the crew had filmed many times in Hamilton and had a good relationship with us and asked for assistance with this. We were able to work with facilities and with the Ticats to come up with a solution that would allow the production to build this standing set and overlap with some game days without causing too much disruption. So the production paid our contractor to move some fencing, patch up some area that wasn't typically used. They contained themselves to kind of a corner of the lot. They put up some safety fencing around their work to discourage people from coming through. They had 24-hour security, and then during game days, they had police on site. So this was a huge win for everyone. It was great for facilities because this site can be a little bit problematic with people doing things they shouldn't be doing. So having people on site and 24-hour security made it a lot easier for facilities to manage the site. It was actually really fun for the community. The production always had staff willing to engage with people, explain what they were doing, explain what show they were from, and where to catch it. It is, just so you all know, a show called Jupiter's Legacy that'll be airing on Netflix. So keep your eyes out for that this year. And it was a win for the corporation as well, because we were able to generate $65,000 in revenue from having this vacant land being used for about 6 weeks. So when filming actually happened, the production was able to work with water to tie into a fire hydrant, sorry. They had a big wind machine and they were shooting the scene where, the boat's rocking side to side in the ocean, the wind machine is blowing, the hydrant is blowing water on, the green screens are projecting ocean scenes. And then they'll take that back and edit it in post-production to look like there was a big storm in the sea in the middle of Hamilton. So it's pretty cool. Another example of how we can kind of think outside the box and work as a team to come up with opportunities is the space that we have beside our Wentworth yard. So at 80 Brant Street, we have a large lot. It's set aside for future yard expansion, but it's not currently being used. It had been used in the past from time to time by productions for base camp parking. So base camp parking, you can see a little picture of all the trucks whenever production comes to town, there's all kinds of equipment, costumes, props, etc., that need to come with them. And so they set up like a little village of trucks and equipment, which is their base camp. We like to keep this out of the way as much as possible. We want to keep those trucks off the street so that they're not taking up parking from merchants. We don't want them idling in residential neighborhoods, and it's easier for them as well if they can all be in one spot and cable together their power. So we're always looking for any kind of square footage we can find. I'm sure I don't need to tell parking that parking's at a premium in the city. This lot is actually very ideally located because it's close to a lot of areas that are heavily filmed. So we were able to take a look at this with the real estate team and facilities and figure out a solution where we were able to, again, invest a little bit through our contractor to clear off an area of the lot that had been covered with topsoil and make an ad hoc parking lot for this base camp parking. So this was done last June. We had parking up until the winter, and then obviously had nothing over the winter months and have had nothing because of COVID. So just in that short period of time, we were able to generate $54,000 in revenue off of an investment of a couple of $1,000s to clear the space. So we wanted to highlight a couple of these examples, again, to thank everyone, to demonstrate the opportunities that are available, but also to start to flag that these are the type of solutions that we're looking for more and more. And particularly as we start to think about coming back to work after things get somewhat back to normal, we do anticipate that there'll be a very high demand from film. So Debbie's going to talk a little bit more about economic recovery, but at this point, we just also wanted to flag that, again, we'll be looking to everyone for creative solutions. The opportunities are there to generate some revenue and help the community. And so we're always welcome, appreciative of any ideas about land that's sitting vacant or perhaps underused that could have these temporary uses. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Debbie.
Yep. So again, just underlining the importance that productions and filming attracts the businesses and it attracts the workforce, and it helps with economic development action plan in terms of increasing that non-residential tax assessment and creates jobs and employment. The images here you'll see is on the left-hand side, that's an interior of Hamilton Film Studios. That's a 5,000 square foot, primarily green studio. And then the next one with Aon, that's the group that's looking at purchasing the Barton Tiffany lands. They made an announcement in June of last year. And then the next one is a young actress that lives in Hamilton. I'm talking to, again, potentially a young workforce in terms of what you can do. And obviously there's similar to music, most of the jobs are actually behind the scenes as opposed to being an actor or an actress or being a musician or in the band. So that's really important when we're talking about building the workforce. And this actress, she actually is in Umbrella Academy, in case you recognize her.
Yeah, thanks. And we also just wanted to touch on quickly some of the social benefits. So film really does have a positive impact on neighborhoods and helping to create a sense of place in Hamilton. Some of these pictures that you can see, the Westdale, I'm sure people are well aware of the success there of the Westdale as a hub for, movie-loving people. A lot of people who are involved in that board and involved in restoring that theater have had industry experience or still are involved in the industry in other ways as well. We've shown a couple of pictures from Umbrella Academy filming on Ottawa Street. You can see in the bottom left-hand corner. That was just such a huge success story where the production was doing filming on the street several times throughout the year last year and really just developed this incredible relationship with the merchants and residents in the area. And so we're able to really turn some potential naysayers around by investing a lot of money in spending locally and spending on the street. So I always love to tell the story of going down for a site visit and seeing all these people walking around with these gigantic platters of butter tarts, and finding out, you know, that we had a restaurant owner on the street who was just absolutely thrilled because in addition to their crew catering, the crew was making a point of going and buying just platters and platters of vegan treats for the crew, Chinese food from one of the restaurants on the street. And so, you know, it was actually bringing more business than some of these restaurants would normally see, as opposed to having a negative impact. The crew made a great point of showing their love for the street. And one thing that was very cool, you can see these bricks. There's a candle store called Wicked Wax on Ottawa Street that the crew made a point of purchasing all their wrap-up gifts from. So they had candles that look like these bricks here, the red brick. They are candles that are meant to represent the brickworks on Lawrence Road. So it's very much about Hamilton and sense of place. And these were distributed to everyone on the street as thank you gifts for the disruption. We know that those crew members are still going back to Ottawa. There's one crew member who lives in Belleville who does a lot of filming in Hamilton, who still makes a point of getting her hair done at the salon that she found when she was there, making that, you know, 3-hour plus trip for the hairdo on Ottawa Street. And then a couple other pictures as well. Again, it's just the examples of film giving back. We have those trucks paving to represent a park where, again, we were a little bit creative and found a park in the winter that was not really being used, that was close to an area that was heavily filmed, arranged with some user groups in the community to be okay with film coming in and renting that parking lot. And because the parking lot was gravel and really due for an upgrade, the production actually paid to have it regraded and updated at their expense as a give back to the community. The ice cream truck, I'm sure you might be wondering what that's all about, was kind of a fun story as well, where we had a production filming in a residential neighborhood, and some kids in the neighborhood kept approaching the production wanting to understand what was going on. So rather than treating it as a nuisance, the production very wisely just invested in having an ice cream truck come around to entertain the kids, build some goodwill in the community, and it was a win for everyone. So another way that film gives back is maybe more fun, more direct for everyone, is helping you survive this quarantine with your binge watching. So we wanted to highlight some of the things that have filmed in Hamilton recently, so that you can go back and play spot the location at home. So Lock and Key is a series based off of a graphic novel. It was filmed at various locations throughout the city, but a couple of bigger ones were City Center, Westfield Heritage Village, Westhill, Lawson Lumber. It is streaming right now on Netflix. A couple interesting things about this production: the series creator and showrunner Carlton Cuse was also the creator of Lost, and has had a string of successful shows. Lock and Key has been doing really well. It's already been renewed for a second season. That's really important to us because we know through research that a production that shoots their pilot or inaugural season in Hamilton or any city is likely to come back to that city for subsequent seasons. And so we're excited to welcome them back for season 2 when production gets going again. Run is a new series for HBO that you can stream on Crave TV. Again, it's great because it's a season 1 show, so hopefully they will be back for subsequent seasons. They've had some locations in Dundas, throughout the downtown, as well as in the Dundas Valley Conservation Area. This show is getting really great critical reviews, so I encourage you to check it out. Mrs. America is a limited series that shot primarily in Hamilton for their locations. They shot at the Convention Center, First Ontario Center, and First Ontario Concert Hall, Central Presbyterian Church, Ockmar, and the Temple Playhouse Daycare. This show is generating quite a lot of Emmy buzz, and it's predicted that one or more of the actresses in it will get Emmys. As you can see, it's a great ensemble cast. So really fun for Hamilton, having A-list actors like Cate Blanchett and Elizabeth Banks and Rose Byrne in town. Nurses is a Canadian show, so We do get a great mix in Hamilton of foreign and domestic production, which is really good news for us because it keeps our position fairly safe, fairly stable. If there are changes or fluctuations in the US economy, there's a good significant chunk of local production as well that comes to Hamilton. And so that helps protect us against any bumps in the road in the South. Nurses is one of these great Canadian. It's fun because you've probably seen it filming and not even noticed. So they're set in a hospital, obviously, and their hospital exteriors are all at David Braley Center and sometimes in the park at City Hall. In addition to this, they film at Tim Hortons Field, the Scottish Rite, and a handful of residential neighborhoods throughout the city. You can stream the first season right now on globaltv.com. And season 2 was actually in production and filming in Hamilton right when COVID hit. In fact, the very last day before the emergency orders came into effect, they were filming at City Hall. So some of you might have noticed that if you were in the office. And Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madam C.J. Walker, is a great story. It's the life story of the first self-made African-American female millionaire. This was filmed, again, with Hamilton as the primary city for locations. So it really is, throughout the series, just very recognizably Hamilton and very fun for a spot the location. So you'll recognize Central Presbyterian Church again, Scottish Rite, Leuna, houses in the St. Clair neighborhood, and you can see that on Netflix. So with that, I'm gonna pass it back to Debbie.
Yeah, just a quick baton pass. I guess a lot of people are generally curious as well in terms of, obviously there's no filming happening right now. So what are staff working on now to prepare for kind of the next steps? So we're doing a lot to kind of get ready for Hamilton's close-up. Kim?
Sorry, I was a little quick flipping the slides. So one thing that we've been working on for about the past year that we're really pleased with, and again, it's a huge thank you to all our partners internally, is having service level agreements in place with some of the departments we're working with. So in the past, when we weren't quite as busy, it might have been a little bit more of an ad hoc approach where we'd get a request and say, okay, how can we make this happen? And start picking up the phone and looking for the right person and the right series of steps. And what we've been able to do is to formalize that a little bit more, put some processes in place, and make it a little bit easier for everyone. We know that filming is not everyone else's primary job, and so we've looked at ways that our office can do most of the heavy lifting to make it really easy to work with us and continue to make these great things happen. So we've put these service level agreements in place, which allows us to provide great service to the industry. The industry is very time sensitive. Most of the time between getting an initial script and having to have all the locations sealed up and ready to go for shooting, there's about a 2 to 3 week window, which means that the location managers who are reaching out to us are looking for information very, very quickly. So we've been able to get a commitment really throughout the city from people we're working with to get answers within 2 business days. We've agreed on some general parameters for how that's going to work, who the contacts are, et cetera. And so that's helped us to be able to provide really great service back to our clients. It's especially important in light, again, of the anticipated demand that we're going to face when we do get back to work. So all predictions are that film will be one of the first industries to come back, and that there will be a very high demand for locations filming. And so really what we're wrestling with right now is trying to make sure that we physically have enough space to put everybody. So making sure that we have our contacts in place internally and can reach out to those people and get answers quickly is important, as is putting together an inventory of city assets and external assets that we can refer people to. So that's why we're working on these updates to the digital locations library with Ontario Creates. Ontario Creates, for those who don't know, is it houses our provincial film commission, and we work really closely with them on attracting productions to start with. So they do maintain a digital locations library where productions can type in, you know, I want to find a church in Hamilton to shoot at, and it brings up list of businesses that meet the criteria and that are interested in filming. Our team is proactively reaching out to businesses in the community and presenting the opportunities that do exist with film coming back to get some revenue coming in, get some action happening. So we're working on that. And then finally, continuing to plug away at putting an online application up through the Amanda portal. So again, working really closely and relying on all of you with our fantastic Amanda IT team. Getting the application online is really more important than ever now, as it allows us a way to serve the client without those face-to-face interactions. So completely contactless, self-serve, fast, efficient, go in, get your permit applied for, approved, and paid for without ever having to pop into the office. I'll pass it back over to Debbie to talk a little bit more about recovery.
Yep. So when we're looking at economic recovery, there's a couple of things that we've been doing, and then just a couple of kind of stats that I want to share. Provincially, there's been some work done in terms of what were the impacts and losses that Ontario faced with regard to filming. And there's estimates that it's about approximately $2.5 billion was unspent, and possibly even more due to the COVID shutdown. So most of that will be kept, and then will be reinvested when productions are able to get back up and running. But you can imagine there'll be kind of a queue in terms of all the other productions that were supposed to maybe film in June. Now there's going to be a bit of a lineup. And as Kim was saying, that we're expecting that there's going to be initially a slow pace of productions because they will have to follow the rules and regulations, and unions are working really hard on this in terms of to ensure distancing requirements. So they'll have to kind of maybe have smaller crews, but spread out into spaces. So we are looking for larger square footage of spaces in order to the different levels of crews to be able to spread out in one area. So that's really important. And then we're expecting a really busy Q4, and then obviously 2021. We're looking at cities in the US because they'll be going first. And both Kim and I sit on separate subcommittees with the province that go up to the federal government as well in terms of how productions are going to come back safely, and then also what are we doing to support the workforce. So we're still, responding to inquiries in terms of businesses that, from film that want to move here or interested in moving here and locating here, and then also the existing ones that are looking at expanding. So staff that are in planning and building are well aware that there's still applications that are coming in for businesses that want to kind of construct or expand their businesses that way. And so we're also looking at how we can increase opportunities, as Kim's been mentioning as well, about when kind of film comes back. So how can we support the other industries? How can we support the other sectors for opportunities? So we're starting to reach out to, for example, live music and music in particular to begin with, because they're the most, they're pretty hard hit and they're pretty much fully kind of shut down. And also they're going to be one of the last to come back. So we're looking at how could we utilize live music venues as holding spaces for productions or lunchrooms so they can start generating some money before they're able to open. We're doing the same thing with recording studios, again, to encourage productions to come in. Also, it helps us also future long-term so that we start developing these broader and broader lists. From that perspective, also looking at hotels and restaurants and so on, how can we kind of look at that? And then understanding and assisting with how the industry is working to come back safely through that subcommittee I was talking about. So what is the local support? There'll be opportunities for employment. And there's some areas of film where there's little to minimum amount of training. So there'll be jobs available for transit, for drivers. So as long as you have a driver's license, you'll be able to apply for those types of jobs, even hairstylists, makeup artists, You'll see, carpenters, electricians. If they have those skills, they can transition into some of the film areas. And then unions are looking at how can they do some of the training. And there's already existing shortages with film pre-COVID. So we're looking at how we can really assist with those opportunities. But Hamilton does, and Ontario has a very strong workforce. So we're also looking at, in partnership with the province and other cities, how can we promote the existing workforce to, again, bring those productions in, because there will be concerns around people coming up from the US. We don't know what that's going to look like in terms of travel and workforce kind of moving into different areas. So we're keeping an eye on that one as well. So I think we're at our almost last slide, right? Yeah, we're at our last slide.
So
I was going to say, so I didn't see any questions kind of coming in on the chat. So I don't know if they'll start rolling in now, or if people are asking about specific productions or what we're doing on the different elements we talked about.
So if there's any questions, they can come in through. If there are any questions, if we can have them come in through the chat using the chat bubble. It looks like we have one. So this question is coming from Omar. What specific features of the city attract the filming industry to Hamilton? And has there been a request in keeping historical features of certain corridors by avoiding modernizing the streetscaping?
I can answer that. That's an amazing question, and it's actually very intuitive, because that is one of the things that is very attractive about Hamilton, is that we do have those heritage buildings and those, I want to say, for lack of a better word, old-fashioned streetscapes. We're not overrun with condos and skyscrapers, so that becomes more of a challenge in Toronto for productions, that everything starts to really look the same, and there's no interesting kind of historical architecture for them to get anymore downtown Toronto. So definitely that's a draw. I would say the biggest draw is that we have such a wide variety of locations. So definitely it's those, heritage buildings, historic architecture, but also the fact that we do have a downtown. We have streetscapes that can look like a Brooklyn or, Chicago, Washington. We have residential neighborhoods at all different kind of levels of affluence, I guess. So we can do gritty, we can do the wealthy kind of McMansion look. We have such a variety of spaces where we have beaches, we have green spaces, conservation areas, and then we also have a really cool industrial look. So we can be a Detroit, we can be a Pittsburgh. So that's the biggest thing. They love that we're easy to navigate. We're small, so you can get all these different looks without having to go too far, which makes cheaper for them, really, frankly, and easier for them to do. And then in addition to that, there are additional tax credits for certain productions whenever they go outside of, it's called the zone, but it's essentially the GTA. So if you can picture an imaginary line, it kind of ends with Burlington. And then as soon as they're over into Hamilton, depending on the production, there's an additional 10% tax credit that they qualify for. So that also makes us very attractive.
Data. I'm placing the order soon. I asked Ali if she wants anything.
Great. Thank you, Omar, for your question. We have another question. We have lots of questions trickling in, so we'll just kind of go in order until we run out of time. But this one is for Debbie. This one's from Ken Coy. Debbie, can you also consider theater and event spaces, for instance, Theater Aquarius and Leuna, for filming during COVID recovery?
Yeah, so I had kind of started typing some stuff in there, but yeah, so certainly when I kind of describe venues, certainly live music venues are kind of on the top of our list, but we're also including theaters or conference convention center spaces because they're large, which is really beneficial, and for film, but also because they're not going to be able to receive business at this time for their regular uses. So yes, they will be included as well. And yep.
Thank you for that question, Ken. And we have a couple more questions here. This one is from Judy Lamb. Can you please provide any updates of Stelco location being used for potential film studios unless it's confidential?
So, I mean, we get inquiries all the time in terms of different spaces for film. Right now, a lot of the Stelco facilities are actually being used by a company called Skylight. So they're renting out spaces. They've been involved in large productions, and so Stelco is still. What I can say is Stelco is still very much a space that is conducive for filming as is, or for it to be repurposed and for someone to come in and actually develop it as a proper, what I call as a proper soundstage. So it'd have to be developed so you could use, so there'd be sound mitigation and as a proper space. So yeah.
Thank you for that question, Judy. We have another question from Dana. What do you attribute the spike in filming over the last couple of years to?
So I was going to say, I think Kim covered some of it previously in when she mentioned about the tax credit and about the variety of locations. But Kim?
Yeah, I mean, that for sure. It's just kind of on par with trends in the province. So it's the whole province has just exploded in terms of business. Netflix, I'm sure you might have followed in the news, made a huge investment in Toronto. And so that's brought a ton of Netflix production. There's a new studio that opened, I believe in 2018 or maybe early 2019 in Mississauga, a CBS studio. So again, all of these developments bring more business to the region as a whole. And with film, it really is a regional thing. There are, we work closely together with Toronto, Mississauga, Durham region, et cetera. We're on the phone every week, and the Provincial Film Commission is bringing productions to this general area. And when they're here, there's, more than enough to go around. So as the province gets busier, Hamilton gets busier as well. Hamilton has done a little bit better than any of the other regions. And again, as Debbie mentioned, you can attribute that to things like just having the variety of looks that they need, having those tax credits, and then I'll say also our amazing service that brings them back.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. We have another question from Sherry Lucia. Can you share some more insight and activities that you use to recruit the film crews to Hamilton?
So I think Kim and I'll probably share, I guess, the response on this one to say that some of it is just film comes. We haven't done a huge amount of proactive in terms of to bring the industry here, partially because it might scare people in terms of the amount, if we were to be very proactive. But they just naturally come here, and they have, and it's been kind of a 5-year journey, and it's just kind of snowballed from there. So the more people that film here and that have filmed here, they want to bring their production. So once they come to Hamilton, similar to like a visitor, once they come to Hamilton, they see all of the benefits, and then they want to come back to the city. But Kim?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Debbie, that once they come here, they want to come back. So like, without doing a humble brag, they really do like dealing with us. They like dealing with everyone they talk to across the city. They love the businesses here. They love the residents here. It's a cool place. Like they just like being in Hamilton. They see it as up and coming. They see our fantastic art scene, restaurants, and everything that's happening here. And they just personally enjoy being here. So the decision makers want to keep coming back. In terms of proactive ways that we're bringing it, as Debbie mentioned, it's somewhat limited, but a couple of things that happen are and again, it's pretty collaborative with the other regions in the province. So, producers are brought in from LA once a year for a production brunch where we all get to pitch to them. There's a fan tour that comes through Hamilton once a year where we have an opportunity to kind of pitch. We encourage local businesses to sell themselves through the Locations Library and the Ontario Production Guide. So those are free resources that we try to connect people with that productions really do use to help guide their selections. And then just all of the continuous improvement projects that we've listed to make sure it's a good experience for them and that we're competitive with other regions and keep them coming back.
I just had kind of added that
Sure.
once we do get the film studio, so in the Economic Development Action Plan, one of our goals was to bring in a film studio. And so once that happens, once the production does come here, that will increase productions because people will have spaces to film their interior spots. And so naturally they'll not want to go to, and they might go a little bit farther to other communities. Now when they're on locations, it's just easier for them to film in Hamilton. So that will also result in an increase to productions.
Great, thank you for that question, Sherry. I think we have some more time for another one. We have one here from M. Chung. Wonderful job. A question regarding filming in heritage buildings and sites. How are you managing any challenges around maintaining the integrity of heritage buildings or sites that they are not damaged or negatively impacted?
That's a great question. We're lucky that we have a really amazing heritage resource management team, and they're in our division. So they're our colleagues. I don't know if Chung is Martha, so you're our colleagues. We're right across each other. So that promotes a really high degree of collaboration, which is fantastic. We've got people like Dave Turner and John Clement who deal with a lot of the filming on the heritage sites, who've been doing it for a long time and have their own processes in place. And my colleague Sarah Rock in the film office is actually leading a project right now trying to work really closely with heritage staff to, again, just make sure that we're providing any support that's needed. I know one sort of opportunity is to look to other places like Parkwood Estate and Oshawa that host a lot of filming and have been able to strike the right balance. And so we always offer to connect with those resources. We have relationships with most of these people, and so we can connect teams together to share best practices. I mentioned earlier, I'm on a weekly call with some of the other regions, and so that's something that might come up if someone's had an issue, then it gets discussed in the group. And so again, we're always sharing best practices around that. Julia, if she's on the call, could attest to a few years back that was actually an entire panel feature at the Provincial Film Commission's regional film panel. So those are the ways that we try to assist, but for sure, a lot of it comes down to having awesome colleagues in HRM who do just a great job of managing those sites.
Great, thank you for that question. I think we have one question left for the amount of time that we have. This one is from Julia Davis. Are there any opportunities that have been investigated for film tourism being implemented? People who are big fans may want to come and see where their favorite shows are filmed. Are there any opportunities to attract visitors to this type of initiative?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we talk about a lot as a team. I mean, again, we're so lucky because we're embedded within tourism and culture. So our colleagues in tourism are right there, and those discussions are really easy to have. I know within the team, there's a couple of things on the burner. I don't want to take anyone's thunder, but we have been recently really focused on trying to manage all the filming that's coming in because we did see such a significant spike. So we were really trying to kind of get our ducks in a row around servicing what we've got first, looking at how to make sure that business keeps coming. And then, as we're getting more and more of a handle on that, then it is really interesting and fun to start thinking about that as an option. So hopefully, I mean, unfortunately, I don't really have any initiatives to tell you about right now, but hopefully the next time we do a presentation like this, there'll be one or two interesting things we can share.
Yeah, and then I would just kind of add that, yeah, it's something definitely that we've talked a lot about. It's part of it is managing. We don't want to send tourists to neighborhoods because that's not going to make our community very happy. And then also we want to make sure that we don't want it to be like a waterfall initiative where they're coming to the city because they're interested, but maybe they're not spending money and they're creating more damage or impacts than they're actually bringing in. So we're kind of trying to balance being focused and then also not entirely sure the ROI for tourism film specific, but we do know the ROI for productions. But it's not lost from that perspective.
Yeah, I think I should jump in before Dana kills me. I mean, one thing that's kind of cool that the tourism marketing people have put together are blogs. So there's writers just kind of talking about all the cool places that have been shot in Hamilton. And then to Debbie's point, they keep the focus on public spaces as opposed to residential. So it's a super positive thing where it's driving tourists back to those public businesses so they can spend some money in Hamilton.
Great presentation. I think that brings us to the end of our lunch and learn for today. I know there's been a lot of questions that have been sent, and we'll share those with the presenters so that they can address those with the individuals who have asked them. So thank you so much for being a great audience. And thank you to our presenters, Kim Adrovez and Debbie Spence, for sharing all the great information that you shared with us today. Just on a note for future Lunch and Learns, there is our upcoming Lunch and Learn about the Climate Change Action Plan, and that will be happening on Tuesday, May the 26th. And an invitation will be coming out later this week, probably tomorrow, so keep your eyes out for that. And if anybody has any projects happening on your teams that you think would make a great Lunch and Learn, feel free to reach out to anybody on the Employee Engagement Committee, as well as to myself, so that we can investigate a bit further and bring those forward. We always love information sharing with everybody. So that brings us to the end of our Lunch and Learn. Thank you very much, and see you next time.